Managing Partner at Davidson, and today I'm joined with Kate Roffey, the Melbourne Football Club President and Director of Deals and Major Projects at Wyndham City. Kate's professional career has seen her as the CEO of the Committee for Melbourne, the CEO of Vic Sport, and the manager of the Melbourne Park redevelopment for Tennis Australia. Kate was formerly a biomechanist and an athlete at the AIS. Kate is renowned within the sporting, government and corporate worlds for her transformational, inclusive and no-holds-barred leadership, and she's my guest for the next instalment of the Davidson XChange series. Thank you, Kate, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So, Kate, I'm keen to hear about your experience of Grand Final week. There was a stage where I think I spoke to you just after the prelim and you weren't sure if you were even going to make it. So tell us what it was like.
Yeah, so I got a last-minute exemption when it looked like we might be in the Grand Final, and I did go just before the prelim, so we went on a bit of a... I certainly went with the belief that we would make it, but I could have been back 3 days after I left to get out. But I had to do my 2 weeks of quarantine. I actually got probably, I think, the last exemption, Kylie, the Bulldogs president, and I, given by the Premier to get in. So did my 2 weeks quarantine. Extraordinary amount of media. I must have done, I think, on average, somewhere around 3 to 5 interviews a day with various groups, particularly around the 2 female presidents. It was the first time we'd had 2 female presidents playing in the Premiership. Peggy O'Neill had won 3 premierships, so they're going 4 of the last 5 premierships have been won by females. What's going on? So there was a lot of that story, and there was a lot of interest in what had happened at Melbourne and the cultural journey and those sorts of things. So I was really pleased I wasn't in Melbourne, because people would text me and say, every time you turn around, you're in the paper or on the news and things. Yeah. So it was actually quite nice being over there and actually being able to do the media but not seeing it everywhere here. So I still had the touch and the feel with what was happening here in Victoria, but not sort of bombarded with it personally. I didn't get out of quarantine until the Friday morning, so midnight Thursday. My quarantine ended just before the match on Saturday. So first thing any Victorian woman watching knows is you go to the hairdresser. So 7:30 in the morning, my cousin, who's a hairdresser, was picking me up to take me to get my hair done. And then it was pretty much a whirlwind of an AFL lunch, a dinner with the Premier and some other people in Perth that had been organised, and then into the Grand Final day. And once you got to Grand Final day, it was function, game. I didn't even see the last quarter really, because we were taken downstairs to get ready for the presentation and people were taking photos and things. So that was a real blur. I had to come back really and watch the game to see what had happened. And then the nice thing about being in Perth was we had the opportunity, just as the team and the support staff, and fortunately we spent time just on the ground until about, 1 or 1:30 a.m. We had players just lying on the ground, enjoying lying on the turf and just being able to chat and have photos with the cup and things. So that was a really lovely period of time. But a lot of that was spent with phone calls and FaceTime calls back to people here in Victoria who couldn't be at the game, and that was I think it was a real driving force for the players. They felt that family and friends and fans couldn't be there. We should have been at the MCG, our home, and we weren't, so that really drove them, I think, to make sure they brought the cup back. And we did really feel for those people who couldn't make it. I mean, I'm extraordinarily fortunate to have been able to go, and I did question that. I said, others can't, should I go? And I originally wasn't, so I wouldn't take a spot in our 75 that could go. Yeah. And I just said, no, I'm not taking a spot from a player or a coach that we need there. When I got an exemption, I did ask my board and Goody and a few others and said, what do you think? And they said, absolutely, we want you here. And you represent the club in the good and the bad times. So fortunately for us, it was a good time. But it was an extraordinarily different thing, probably unique. I don't know that we'll ever see another Grand Final in Perth.
Let's hope not.
Yeah. But it's driven them. Certainly our men have been back out. I don't think they took a break, most of them. They really just went back into running and keeping their fitness up, because they're really driven to come back and win in front of their home crowd here at the MCG. And just based on Sunday, I went to to the pub. There was a supporters function on after that, and I popped in down there, and just walking to the pub, there was Melbourne people everywhere, and this is not 80,000 of them at the MCG on grand final day. This is a replay, so I can only begin to imagine what it would be like out of lockdown, and with a full contingent there cheering them on. So that's what we're aiming for next year. We'd love to be back here playing and winning a premiership at the MCG, our home.
Absolutely.
We wrote the rules of the game, and the MCG is our home. It's our spiritual home, so we'd love to win a premiership there, and I think Melbourne would pretty much go off for about a month if we did that.
It absolutely would. And in fairness, Perth did an amazing job of putting on quite a show, didn't they?
It was extraordinary, and the Perth supporters, we knew we'd be in Perth, and we knew that the supporters over there would want a team to back, so we got over there early. It was part of our strategy with our team, and they said, get here early. We were giving away scarves and chips, and we had a bus going around. That was the Melbourne bus that would take them to the games and made them feel like part of our family, and they really supported us on grand final day. It's a fantastic stadium, and it was a great event. And we're so delighted that we had the opportunity to do that in that unique place, because it now gives us the opportunity to come back and do it again over here in Melbourne.
Fantastic. So how did you set about tackling the job when it was first awarded to you? You've spoken about that leadership tripod, and I guess it's a bit different to in the corporate world, where the leadership tripod's often described as the CEO, CFO, HRD. In a football club, it's probably president, coach and CEO. How did you, what was the strategy to sort of get that alignment that you've described?
Yeah, look, I think they're interesting as well. So as president, I'm actually elected as president by my fellow directors. So we had a very clear discussion about succession plan and what we thought we needed to be, and who we collectively felt was the person that was the right person to step up and take the role on at this point in time. And I'm very honoured to say that my fellow directors said, no, we need it to be you. We think it should be you. And so I think in that they saw something that we needed at that point in time, just in the person that I am. People often ask, should every club have a female president? Is that why they're winning? And it's not, because Peggy and Kylie and I, so Peggy O'Neill, who's the president at Richmond, and Kylie Watson-Wheeler at the Bulldogs, we're all very different people. We do our jobs very differently because we're different people. So that's not necessarily the answer. It's having the right person, irrespective of gender, at the time. And for us, it was really about... I just say, people say, oh, what have you done or whatever, and I say, I'm just the 1,000th piece in the jigsaw. There's 999 other pieces that went in there first, and I just bring my little bit to the jigsaw puzzle, and seems to work in that presidential/leadership capacity. And I think the thing that I bring is that I'm a very welcoming, very open, very accessible sort of person. Our main aim at the moment is to make sure that we're very clearly one club, one very united club, and that includes not just the people who work there and the players and the coaches, it's the supporters and our past players in particular. And that is me. I'm a very sort of embracing and like a mother hen sort of person at that club, and I think that was the missing little bit of our jigsaw puzzle. And so that's warmth, or however you describe it. It's difficult to put it in a descriptor, but that's, I think, was our missing little bit, and we've popped that piece in, and then along with my fellow directors who do the governance aspect of it with me, and Gary Perd, our CEO, who does the operational element of it, and our Richo, Alan Richardson and Goody, and Marcus and Mick Stanier, who do our women's. We're all sort of on the same page. We're all very open and honest with each other, and I think that makes for a really positive... people just say there's a different feel around the club. There's a real positive energy, and I think, who knows, it's one of those magical sort of ingredients. You put it all in the melting pot, and at some point in time, everything you get all the ducks on the pond, and off you go.
And you are famous for talking about the clubs being made up of people, not players. So that warmth and that connectedness, I know that you accept text messages, phone calls from not just players but from partners, and you're involved in people's worlds as much as they want you to be. You're very accessible. So how would the team, the coaches, the players, etc., describe the culture and what it feels like to be part of the Melbourne Football Club right now.
I think that is it. It's we're a family, and look, they're extraordinarily different things to any other sort of entity you get out there, because you are dealing with very much people's lives. We will have a player for 10 or 12 years, and perhaps from the time they're 17 years old, and so we're part of the responsibility of making them the best people that they can be. And I always say, whenever I speak to our players or our staff or anyone else, I want you to be the best person that you can be. And there's a very famous All Blacks book that talks about the change in the culture of the All Blacks, and one of the lines in there is better people make better All Blacks. And that's the thing is, if they're the best people that they can be, they'll be more comfortable, more confident, more capable, and then they'll be the best players that they can be. But as I said to Christian Petrarca once, he just sent a message saying, "Oh, thanks for caring about us players." And I said, "Chris, I care about you people first and foremost, because I'll know you as Christian Petrarca the person for a lot longer than I'll know you as Chris Petrarca the player, because I still want to, in 15 or 20 years' time, be able to catch up with those players who've represented the club, the staff that have represented the club, and actually, how are you going? Check in on them. And, it's not just a football club thing. I still have staff that who worked for me 15 years ago, who'll ring up and ask advice to say, "Oh, I'm changing a job. What do you think?" And I think they're things that we can do to remain accessible to help them, because we know them. We know them better than others may know them when they're moving into a new workforce, because we work with them and help them develop as people. And that's probably the most rewarding thing for me as a president, is seeing these fantastic people in and around the club, whether they're players or staff members, develop as people and go on to do other things. I mean, as a manager or a leader, you don't get to do anything better than help someone else take steps up a ladder, for want of a better term.
Fantastic. You've got a psychology background and have great insights in terms of how people behave and what motivates them and how they think. As we move into this new hybrid way of working, I guess, and with also the great resignation, what do you think some of the key considerations leaders will need to take into this shift to really engage and enhance their workplaces and workforces?
It's an interesting thing. I think as we've worked more at home, we've realised that we can do a little bit more about balancing. In fact, we didn't have a choice over COVID to balance our work and our personal lives. And now people are looking to come back into the workforce in a different way and say, "Oh, you know what, I actually want to be not just worker, I want to be person as well." So I think we're going to need to be a lot more flexible and accommodating, because now everybody wants something different. Some people don't want to be in the office at all. Some want to be in the office all the time. Somebody just want a hybrid mix. And really, if you're going to have the best workforce that you can out there, you're going to need to be flexible in terms of accommodating some of these things that we've learned to do during COVID, which is work around homeschooling, work around walking the dogs, work around lockdown. So I think much more flexible, innovative and creative. I love what COVID has done, because I'm very much a person who doesn't need an office space. Yeah. I love the fact that potentially I can work for a company in Paris and I don't need to live there. So I'm no longer limited by that geographically defining space, which says the head office is in Melbourne, so you've got to be in Melbourne. I find it really exciting and energising. Some other people not so much, and I really do feel for our young people. I know some of my staff have not missed me guiding them in a work perspective, because they've got to get on and do the work, and so here's a list of everything that we need to do this week. What they have missed is that informal thing of, I've just taken over as president of my local cricket club, and one of my staff would drop in and he would say, "Hey boss, what do I do about XYZ?" So they're missing that informal learning. They're missing sitting in a meeting with me and actually seeing, how do you respond in meetings, when do you speak? So our young people, I think, are missing a lot of that personal interaction and experiential learning from not being at home. And I do fear for that sort of gap I think we'll see coming through in a few years' time, as they haven't had that experience.
I share some of those on-the-floor learnings. That it's a real concern, I think. Aspirations for AFLW. What are your aspirations for your own club, but also for the competition?
Yeah, at the moment we've got a real balance. We've got a group of women who are coming through and playing sport who have other lives. And this is the thing, if people talk about let's become fully professional. We've got some of our women who play who say, we actually don't want that. We like that it's the mix. I can do this and I can also do my profession and career. We've got others who are coming through genuine players. I mean, they've come through AFL, and I look at Eden Zanker, for example, who plays for Melbourne, and I just go, she is just such an astonishingly good young player, great athlete. So for her, I go, I'd love to see it be able to be a professional pathway for you. So I think at the moment we're caught in the situation of still expanding into a full league. Some teams still don't have women's teams yet. New licences will be granted, but we have to go slowly catching monkey so we can make sure we've got enough players to actually spread across our leagues. Aspirationally, absolutely, we'd want it to be a professional and a league that these women can play in and actually be paid to play, similar to our men. But I think there's a period of transition we will have to go through where the people coming into play, whether it's men's or women, know that that's what I do. Yeah. And I can do some other things around it. But they're big demands on your body, obviously, but also on your lifestyle. And you really, it's a real struggle to actually play, for example, in our men's competition and work full-time as well, or to work in a significant sense, because the demands in your training and recovery in particular is quite significant. So we need to go through that transition for our women, but it will come. We have the AFL behind it, and I know a lot of women's sports struggle for a long time to get media coverage and to get that professional thing. The great thing about the AFL is it's such a big, strong machine that when they say we will provide good coverage of our women's game, it means we will get the best coverage, Channel 7, of our women's game, because if you don't do that, you won't get the rights to televise the men's game, and that's been fantastic for the women. So I think the strength of the AFL will continue to push it forward, and we'll get there, but take time, people. We need to get it right, and it will be different to the men's. It's not just going to be a women's version of the men's competition, because we don't want nor need that. It'll create its own symbiotic lifestyle that lives exactly side by side with the men's, but it'll be different in its own special way. As it should be.
Fantastic. And Kate, what will you keep doing? What might change so that Melbourne continues to be a force and really challenges for the next 8 to 10 years of these premierships?
Look, everyone's after us now. That's the thing. When you're at the top, you become the hunted. People start looking out for you more. So we have to keep changing our game, and we have to keep morphing into something different, so that we don't become the hunted with the knowledge of that's what you're chasing. We become the hunted with the what's just happened there. So we continue to get better. We continue to go back, even though we've won a premiership, and say we had 4 games during the season that we lost. Yep. We need to go back and look at those mistakes. We got behind on the scoreboard in the grand final. What went wrong in that situation? It certainly doesn't mean that you're going to come out and win every game. Premierships are hard to win, incredibly hard to win. You need so many things to go right. But you can't sit there and go, because we're the premiers, that automatically means that we've got a game and a list that's going to take us to a premiership next year. We've got to work at that list. We've got to work at the game style. We've got to continue to work at our culture and continue to bring new people into the club. We'll have some challenges without a doubt with COVID in the coming seasons for our men and our women, so we're going to need to be nimble and flexible to cope with those again. But we have to keep growing and developing as a club. Players will leave because they retire and things. We've got to have new players coming on, but we've got to have a new game plan, because I can bet every other club at the moment is sitting down watching that final series and going, okay, where are the weak links for Melbourne? So we've got to actually make sure that we change. So when they look at it, they go, oh, now what's happened here? It's exactly what happened in the grand final. They had a plan for Max Gawn. They didn't have a plan for Luke Jackson in the ruck. And, it's all of a sudden it was like, oh, what's happened here? So you've got to have a few tricks up your sleeve, which I won't go into too much detail about, but I'm sure the coaching staff are working on that.
Yeah, I hope Geelong certainly is. Kate, infrastructure, you're quite famous for city shaping and iconic developments. What's in store for the Melbourne Football Club in terms of infrastructure developments?
Yeah, so we're working as we need a more contemporary home base, we call it, or a home for football. We're down at Amy Park, but at the moment things are progressing well. We've just fenced off our training paddock, Gosh's paddock, and their state government, ourselves and the AFL have committed funds to actually have that upgraded so that the oval is bigger and closer to MCG size for training purposes. And then we are working really hard on making sure that we have an identified home base that is contemporary and is big enough. At the moment, our men and women are training in separate venues. Our administration is in a separate place to where our training facilities are, and really we are one club, and that's something that came across very strongly in the players speaking after the grand final, where people would ask me, are they all scripted to say, talk about this selflessness and this one club? And I say, no, that's the culture, that's the ethos, and having us all together is really critical to us, and a facility that allows us all to be together, men, our women and our administration, is really important. So that will be my probably main focal point during my time as president, is hopefully to get a commitment to get something done. It may not be finished by the time I finish as president, but hopefully we'll have a commitment and we'll know where that future is going to be.
Fantastic. And customer focus, I guess that really, every conversation we've ever had, you really do focus on stakeholders and engagement of whether that's ticket holders, fans, or in your executive experience, community members. Why is this so important to all that you've ever done?
Well, we don't have customers. We actually don't even need to be there for a starter. And it's the same for a football club. If we don't have members, then we don't need to be out there playing football. So they're the people that make the club, and I'm so proud of the way our staff at the Melbourne Football Club have done the Cup tour. I'm constantly getting messages and LinkedIn notes and things from people who say, I touched the Cup in Warrnambool, or it's in Sydney at the moment, and people up there are going, oh, the Cup's here. And for them it's such an enormously important thing, that touch point with the club and the Cup, and that is all about going out and saying you're important to us because you're the people that make the club. And it's the same, and I think if there's anything that organisations do poorly out there, it's still they forget that it's not about us inside the organisation. I always say when I'm down at Wyndham, at the local government area, I say your customers are not your staff, your customers are the people who live in this municipality. Your job is to actually make their life better. Your job is to make the livability of the municipality better, not to worry about what your office looks like or what desks you have. And there's still way too much focus, I think, in all sorts of organisations about, how we run the trains, how we run the trams, how we get the planes off the air. I flew into an airport once. I waited forever for my bags, and I had the opportunity to talk to the CEO. And I said, seriously, I got off, there was a car to pick me up, and the driver said, we'll just wait here for ages, they're slow with the luggage. And I said, that's poor customer service. He said, oh yeah, that's because we take the freight off first and we worry about that. And I said, well, I'm pretty sure the guys picking up the freight aren't complaining to 100 people like I am on ABC News Breakfast tomorrow about the fact that you couldn't care less about me as the customer. So he said that. He said, I've never actually sat there and we think we've got to get the freight on the road, but you're right, that word of mouth from the customer can do a lot of damage, as can one positive thing said about great customer service. It spreads like wildfire.
Absolutely.
So we have focus up on the people that you serve, whatever sort of organisation you are, because I think too often that gets forgotten in my own internal problems. Yeah.
And that connection to the Cup, it must have been a pretty special moment on Sunday, sharing that with, how many were there?
I think it was about 37,000.
Yeah. Wow.
And the extraordinary thing is, I was heading to the function. I had my little my rapid antigen test to make sure I didn't have COVID, so I could be with the players. And as I was standing there, I made the mistake of getting out, dropped off at the top of Yarra Park and walking to the stadium, and there was all this beeping of horns and yelling out at me, Kate, and I thought it was my shirt undone, so I checked and I thought, no, I had a polo shirt on. But people were so excited to be going there and to see me walking around and stop for selfies and things like that. And I thought, this is incredible. We're getting all these people to come and watch a replay of a game. The first goal was kicked by Melbourne. When Melbourne kicked his first goal, the sound was like being back in Perth. It was just extraordinary. one of the great things, you go for a game for once and you actually know the outcome. So that was fantastic. But the crowd there were, it was like they were at the game. They loved it so much, and the players, yeah, they just said this was exactly what we needed to be able to share this with our fans, have their families there, and it was really quite an extraordinary thing. People were going, is this going to work? And we said we think so, but our events team does such a great job of putting that on, and we had function rooms that were full of people, and it was fantastic actually.
So
I was
special.
just delighted.
Yeah, one of our teammates, Cameron, he has a photo of his little 6-week-old baby girl inside the cup. And so, yeah, I think it was one of the proudest days of his life.
Absolutely, and that's the thing, is we want every member, by the time we get to the start of next season, hopefully every member's had a chance to have their photo with the cup.
Yeah.
And we had all 13 of our cups outside the grounds as people came in and could get their photos. I think that's probably the first time. Certainly Melbourne had it, but any club has probably a lot of clubs don't have that many cups, let's face it, but they've put all their cups out for people to actually come and touch. And I was talking to Gary Pert, our CEO, when we were in Perth, and I said, it is not going to be a cup that you have to put gloves on and you can't touch it. And it sits in a glass cabinet. I mean, it's a fairly hefty thing. It's got a few scratches and dints and dings already, but it's like people can touch it. If we need to get it cleaned and some dings beaten out of it, and we already have, we'll do that, but it's not to sit there in the cabinet and nobody ever sees it. We want it out at every event, and it is. I mean, people could ask me, can I bring it to things? I'm like, it's not here, it's in Sydney. So, that's really important again, because it belongs to the supporters, not me, not the players, not the coaches. That's the Melbourne Football Club's cup, and it's the supporters' cup every bit as much as it's anyone else's.
Fantastic. And what's the fairy tale script look like for Melbourne here on in from 2022 and beyond? Look,
we have set ourselves up to be a team that's challenging for finals for a long time. That was our plan 8 years ago, and it's taken a long time to get there. But we've built the list, we've built the culture, we've built the support around the club. So all sorts of things happen, and as I said, with COVID, people sort of forget that people will get COVID, we'll probably get COVID. Yeah. The difference between us getting it and going into isolation for 10 days and coming back out and doing something like this, and a player who might get it and have to come back to full-on training or playing a game, is an extended time period. So every club will have to cope with those sorts of things. But we've done what we need to do off the field. We've built the list, we've built the culture, we've got the alignment. So we expect that we'll be strong and competitive and challenging, certainly for finals. Premierships are different things. It's very hard to win a premiership, but that's what we expect for our men and women, because that's what we've worked on as a club, and you don't put all that work in for 8, 10, 57 years to just win one. So we'll certainly, like every club, be aiming to win more than one, but they're very, very difficult to get the ultimate prize. But like we said, we're not being complacent and sitting there going, because we won last year, we'll automatically even make finals next year. You've got to keep working and doing all particularly the off-field stuff and the preparation. As I spoke to our women when they lost last year and missed the grand final when they were beaten by Adelaide, and I was with them in Adelaide, and our coach said, would you speak to them after the game? And I said, this is a learning process, a maturing process. You've got to keep going. Whether it's work or life or anything else, you'll get knocked down plenty of times. You've got to have the courage to get up and get in the ring again and fight on. And Roger Federer, asked him, he says, what's the difference between all the other players and him as a champion? He says, I just get up more often when I get knocked down. So they'll come back, they'll keep fighting, they'll get up again, and our men and our women are ready to go and give it their best shot for more of those nice shiny cups, which are very nice to hold.
It's incredibly exciting. And Kate, one for the Ted Lasso fans out there, if Simon Goodwin's not around to coach in, let's say, 5 years from now, would Ted make it onto the shortlist?
Would Ted make it onto the list? Look, funny, I get the real life Ted Lasso. People think I look like Rebecca from Ted Lasso, so now we've got the real life story. So would Ted make it in? Look, hopefully we'll develop a a culture there and a club that can coach itself. But I'm not sure that Ted can. But Hannah Waddingham, if you'd like to come down and join us for a game, or Ted, then you're more than welcome to come in. But it's great. A lot of people. I spoke at a conference in Sydney a couple of weeks ago, I think it was, and someone asked about the Ted Lasso sort of thing. It's people naturally associate the Ted Lasso story with the Melbourne Football Club story. And we are a bit of a Hollywood story at Melbourne Football Club, not just because it was 57 years, but really if there's a club that's had, tragedy and its share of difficulties throughout the year, over the years, it has been Melbourne. And I think that was one of the extraordinary things about this year's Premiership. It wasn't just Melbourne supporters, it was Melbourne, it was Victoria, because really it was a symbol that you can get through COVID, you can overcome these challenges. And there were a lot more people I know got in touch with me and said, we really hope Melbourne win this year, because it was a sign of something more, that resilience, that courage, that beating the odds sort of thing. It meant so much to so many people who really had done it tough in Victoria, because we'd virtually been locked in our houses for 2 years. So
couldn't agree anymore. That's fantastic. Well, Kate, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for joining us on the Davidson XChange, and we wish Melbourne Football Club all the best for 2022 and beyond.
Thank you, Claire.